Although obviously we've already seen the Object Explorer in action in some of the preceding screencasts, there's some really very useful things that you get at just directly in the Object Explorer, which I want to show. You just click on any object at any level in the tree, and usually any useful information is shown at that level at the click of a button. It's really much easier than doing stuff at a operating system command line. So for example, at the instance level we got an overview of the instance, and I've just told it to go off and get the status, which will run an onStack command to bring that information back. Server Studio uses both command lines over a managed telnet or SSH session, as well as a database connection to get these details. Okay, then it's like an onStack minus P, onStack minus L, onStack minus C, but actually it's more useful than that because it shows you the differences from startup and right now, and also compared to the default values. And then an onStack minus M. You can tell it how many lines of message log you want to bring back. Okay, then at the databases level, calculating the total space used by a database when you've got more than one database in the same DB space is an incredibly difficult task. Here it's just really simple. I can sort by the total size here. If that was taking a long time to achieve, you can disable that feature. Then if we drill down into a database, as you saw just now, it will actually remember what object trees you've got open when you last expanded that node. Yeah, so at every stage you can just click on a node to get an overview in the properties pane, or we can actually open the node to then drill down further in. So you click on a stored procedure, it's just going to show the code of that procedure. There's dependency analyses all over Server Studio wherever relevant. It will bring up a graphic using the built-in ER diagram facility showing you what objects depend on the one you're looking at. Execution plan, it's just quickly gone off and done a text version of what we looked at with the graphical query analyzer. Okay, tables. Taking customer as an example, on this side we can use the design tab to look at how it's been defined. If you should want to go into change the schema, you actually do right click, edit, and then change the structure permissions, and rather interestingly you can go and just change the content dynamically. Yeah, and this is very much a full data editor, so for example, if I were to maybe that was wrong and it should have been Bays Sports, I can just change the data. Yeah, we've also got insert and delete capabilities, and once I do a refresh it will commit those data changes. Very handy. Okay, I'm going to skip over some things that are covered in more detail in other screencast segments. Quite often it's very handy to have nodes expanded on this side when you're editing a SQL script on the right hand side. Then you want to insert a column name, for example, you can just click on a column name and then do copy name and then paste it in the other side. Indexes draw right down to see all the details of those indexes. Click on tables at that level, that's particularly handy for doing an analysis of tables that need reorganizing. Just bring it, click on tables, sort by extents. You can see system tables are in a separate node, that's Informix's own catalogue tables. You can go into indexes and constraints directly rather than going via the table. Everything else as you'd expect within databases, and just a bit on storage and sessions, which is fantastically useful. So here at a glance we've got the amount of space in each of the DB spaces. The two full ones are actually my logical and physical logs, which typically would be full. And then for a given DB space, we can just drill in, just with double clicking, and look at the chunks. Anywhere on the right hand side you can double click to drill into something rather than doing it via the Object Explorer. Really useful thing here, you can get it to come back and tell you what database objects you've got in a DB space. Quite hard to do via the command line. Okay, there are provided facilities to add chunks. which I think you need to do via the Object Explorer pane. And this generates, it shows you the command that will be generated. So let's say I want to add that device, and let's say it's 2 gigabytes. You can use whichever unit you want and offset if necessary. And you can see it will, if we proceed, it will go ahead and do it, but also for another time it will show us what onspaces command we could have used to do it. Then sessions, really useful. At a glance you can see which users are locking the most rows, doing the most read and writes, most sequential scans. You can group them by database, for example. So let's say you just want to know what sessions are on a particular database, and for any given session we can double click into it to look up the equivalent of onstat minus g sesh. And then locks, IO activity, memory, all things you could have got with onstat, but this is really a lot easier to do it with a mouse click. Also at this level we can kill a session, so it's like on mode minus Z.